Imagine for a moment a biological engine that has beaten flawlessly over 2.5 billion times since the day you were born. It has adapted to your stress, fueled your triumphs, and sustained you through decades of life's unpredictable demands. Yet right now, for millions of individuals entering what should be the most liberated chapter of their lives, this magnificent engine is quietly being primed for catastrophic failure. You might feel perfectly fine. Your annual electrocardiogram might look entirely unremarkable. You might even pride yourself on keeping your cholesterol numbers within an acceptable range. But beneath the surface, hidden within the microscopic architecture of your coronary arteries, a silent crisis is accelerating. We have been conditioned to believe that a heart attack is a sudden, violent ambush of fate, an unavoidable consequence of bad genetics, or merely the tragedy of growing older. We point to the passing years as the ultimate culprit. But what if I told you that the vast majority of these cardiac events are not accidents of aging at all? What if clinical data and advanced gerontology revealed that up to 70% of acute myocardial infarctions in our senior population are actively triggered, nurtured, and finalized by a single, deeply ingrained daily habit? A habit so thoroughly normalized in our modern culture that you are likely engaging in it at this very second. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Richard Ben, and welcome back to my channel. Growing older doesn't mean you have to give up your independence or your vitality. In fact, it is the exact opposite. On this channel, we cut through the dense medical jargon to give you real, honest health tips. From practical senior fitness routines and mastering your complex medication management to simple daily habits for crucial fall prevention, I am here to give you the straightforward medical advice you deserve. You have worked incredibly hard for your golden years. Let us make sure you have the robust health and the physiological resilience to actually enjoy them. Hit subscribe and let's protect your health together. Today, we are tearing down a dangerous medical myth and exposing the silent mechanics of how prolonged, uninterrupted sedentary behavior, what I define clinically as physiological stagnation, is quietly dismantling your cardiovascular architecture from the inside out. When we reach our 60s and beyond, society insists on delivering a deeply flawed message. It tells us that it is finally time to slow down, to rest, to seek absolute comfort, and to take a seat permanently. From a physiological and geriatric standpoint, this is unequivocally the most lethal piece of cultural advice ever dispensed to the aging population. The human cardiovascular system was never engineered for passive retirement. It evolved over millennia for continuous, dynamic demand. It requires the constant mechanical stress of movement to maintain its structural integrity. When you surrender to the recliner, when you sit in a chair for 4, 6, or 8 hours a day uninterrupted, you are not merely resting your bones. You are broadcasting a systemic chemical signal to your vascular network that its elasticity and resilience are no longer required. You are initiating a biological cascade of deterioration that masquerades as relaxation. To understand why this specific habit claims so many lives, we must look closely at the endothelium. This is the delicate, ultra-thin inner lining of your blood vessels, a biological barrier just one cell thick that separates your flowing blood from the muscular walls of your arteries. For decades, medical science viewed the endothelium as nothing more than a passive pipe, a simple conduit for blood to travel through. We now know that this single layer of cells is one of the most active, intelligent, and crucial endocrine organs in the entire human body. The endothelium is responsible for monitoring blood pressure, regulating inflammation, and preventing the formation of deadly blood clots. Most importantly, it is the primary manufacturing site for nitric oxide, a miraculous vasodilator molecule that signals the smooth muscles of your arteries to relax, widen, and accommodate increased blood flow. Nitric oxide is the ultimate anti-aging molecule for your heart, keeping your vascular system pliable, young, and resistant to damage. However, the production of nitric oxide is entirely dependent on a physical phenomenon known as hemodynamic shear stress. Shear stress is the mechanical friction created by blood rushing vigorously against the endothelial wall. When you are moving, walking, or simply shifting your weight, your heart pumps faster, the blood flows with force, and the shear stress triggers a massive release of nitric oxide. Your arteries expand, your blood pressure stabilizes, and the inner walls remain smooth and defensive against plaque accumulation. But what happens when you adopt the habit of uninterrupted sitting? The moment you settle into that comfortable chair for hours on end, your heart rate plummets. The powerful, cleansing river of your bloodstream slows to a sluggish, lazy crawl. hemodynamic shear stress drops to near zero. In the absence of this mechanical friction, the endothelium goes dormant. Nitric oxide production crashes. Without the protective wash of nitric oxide, the arteries begin to stiffen, losing their vital ability to dilate in times of stress. This is where the true danger of physiological stagnation begins to manifest, silently and without any outward symptoms. When the endothelium is deprived of movement, it becomes dysfunctional and highly permeable. It essentially opens its doors to circulating low-density lipoproteins, the so-called bad cholesterol. These lipid particles seep into the subendothelial space, the area just beneath the inner lining of the artery. Because the stagnant environment has also triggered local inflammation, your immune system dispatches white blood cells called macrophages to clean up these invading lipids. The macrophages gorge themselves on the cholesterol, swelling up and dying, transforming into toxic inflammatory structures known as foam cells. This is the birthplace of atherosclerosis. Over years of sitting, of resting, of watching hours of television without moving, this fatty streak grows into an atherosclerotic plaque, narrowing the artery and restricting blood flow to the heart muscle. Yet, narrowed arteries alone are rarely what cause a sudden, fatal heart attack. Many seniors live for decades with significantly blocked arteries without ever experiencing a cardiac event. The ultimate trigger, the true executioner in this scenario, is the stability of that plaque. Plaque comes in two forms, stable and vulnerable. Stable plaque has a thick, tough, fibrous cap keeping the inflammatory core safely locked away from the bloodstream. Vulnerable plaque has a paper-thin, fragile cap, ready to rupture at the slightest provocation. When you spend your days immobilized in a state of physiological stagnation, the chronic, low-grade inflammation circulating in your body begins to actively dissolve the fibrous cap of these plaques. You are systematically turning stable, manageable blockages into fragile, highly explosive, ticking time bombs. When one of these vulnerable plaques inevitably ruptures, perhaps when you suddenly stand up or experience a moment of emotional stress, or even while you are sleeping, the highly toxic, inflammatory core is violently exposed to the bloodstream. Your body immediately interprets this rupture as a massive injury, exactly like a severe cut on your skin. Platelets rush to the scene in a desperate attempt to seal the wound. Within minutes, a massive blood clot forms inside the coronary artery. This clot abruptly and completely cuts off the supply of oxygen-rich blood to a section of your heart muscle. The muscle cells begin to suffocate, crying out in the form of crushing, radiating chest pain. This is an acute myocardial infarction. The heart muscle begins to die. And the foundation for this catastrophic event was not laid in a single moment of exertion. It was meticulously constructed over thousands of quiet, comfortable hours spent sitting perfectly still. The destruction caused by this habit extends far beyond the structural walls of your blood vessels. Prolonged sitting fundamentally rewires your entire metabolic engine. We possess the largest organ system in the body, our skeletal muscle, which is designed to be a massive, efficient furnace for burning glucose and circulating fats. When you remain locked in a static posture for extended periods, the major muscle groups in your legs, your back, and your core essentially go to sleep. Electrical activity in the muscles flatlines. Within just a few hours of immobility, the production of a crucial enzyme called lipoprotein lipase drastically plummets. Lipoprotein lipase is the biological vacuum cleaner responsible for pulling dangerous triglycerides out of your bloodstream and feeding them into your muscle cells to be burned as energy. When you shut down your muscular furnace by sitting all day, those triglycerides have nowhere to go. They back up into your bloodstream, thickening your blood and accelerating the formation of arterial plaque. Simultaneously, your muscle cells become stubbornly resistant to insulin. The glucose from your last meal cannot enter the cells efficiently, resulting in elevated blood sugar levels. High blood sugar acts like microscopic shards of glass, further scarring the delicate endothelium and fueling the inflammatory fires of atherosclerosis. You create a perfect, enclosed ecosystem of metabolic dysfunction. You could eat the healthiest Mediterranean diet in the world, filled with leafy greens and lean proteins, but if you immediately consume that perfect meal and sit in a recliner for 4 hours, your stagnant physiology will struggle to metabolize those nutrients effectively, turning a healthy meal into a metabolic liability. It is absolutely crucial to address a very common, very dangerous modern illusion, the myth of the active couch potato. Many seniors believe they are entirely protected from cardiovascular disease because they diligently perform 30 to 45 minutes of structured exercise every single morning. They go for a brisk walk, they attend a water aerobics class, or they ride a stationary bike. This is undoubtedly fantastic for your heart and must be encouraged. However, emerging geriatric cardiology reveals a terrifying truth. A 30-minute walk in the morning does not medically immunize you against the toxic effects of sitting for the next 10 hours straight. You cannot out-exercise prolonged immobility. The profound drop in lipoprotein lipase, the stagnation of blood flow, the stiffening of the endothelium, these processes happen in real time as you sit, regardless of what you did at 7 o'clock in the morning. Your heart does not just need a brief, intense spike of activity. It requires a baseline of continuous, low-level dynamic engagement throughout the entire waking day. We must deeply examine the psychological and environmental traps that encourage this lethal habit. The architecture of modern senior living is practically designed to enforce immobility. We surround ourselves with remote controls, smart home devices, and ultra-comfortable seating that entirely removes the necessity of physical effort from our daily lives. We are sold a vision of the golden years that prioritizes total convenience over biological necessity. When everything is within arm's reach, the body is robbed of its vital micro-movements. The simple act of standing up from a chair to change a television channel, or walking into the kitchen to fetch a glass of water, or bending down to retrieve a dropped item. These are not inconveniences. They are the fundamental biological maintenance your cardiovascular system requires to survive. By designing our environments to eliminate friction, we are inadvertently designing environments that accelerate decay. The human aging process is not an unavoidable slide into fragility. It is a negotiation between your genetics and your daily behaviors. The heart is a highly responsive, adaptive organ, constantly reading the physical demands you place upon it. When you demand nothing, it weakens its infrastructure to conserve energy. When you demand consistent, reasonable effort, it fortifies its defenses. We have normalized the sight of seniors spending their entire afternoons and evenings immobilized in front of glowing screens, believing that because they are not engaging in harmful vices like smoking or excessive drinking, they are safe. But sitting is the new stealth pathogen of the 21st century. It is a silent, odorless, invisible toxin that we willingly administer to ourselves in massive, uninterrupted doses every single day, completely unaware that it is slowly asphyxiating the very organ that keeps us alive. The solution to this crisis is not found in extreme interventions, punishing boot camps, or dangerous athletic endeavors that risk joint damage and severe injury. The aging body does not require extremes to thrive. It requires the precise, deliberate application of consistent micro-movements. The strategy to dismantle this deadly habit is shockingly simple, yet it requires a profound shift in daily awareness. It is about fundamentally breaking the continuous chain of stillness. The golden rule of geriatric cardiovascular health is that your body should never remain in a static, seated posture for more than 30 consecutive minutes. Every half hour, the timer must go off, and the habit of stagnation must be shattered. You must rise from the chair. The simple, mechanical act of standing up engages the massive muscles of your quadriceps, your glutes, and your core. Instantly, electrical activity surges through your lower body. The enzyme lipoprotein lipase is reactivated, immediately beginning to clear triglycerides from your blood. Your heart rate elevates slightly, pushing a fresh wave of blood through your vascular network, stimulating the endothelium, and triggering that vital release of nitric oxide. You do not need to perform jumping jacks. You simply need to walk across the room, gaze out the window, stretch your arms toward the ceiling, or fetch a glass of water. 2 to 3 minutes of light, vertical movement is enough to reset the metabolic clock, to flush the stagnant blood, and to preserve the elasticity of your arteries. This concept is known as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. For the senior population, NEAT is exponentially more important than structured, high-intensity workouts. It is the cumulative effect of these tiny, seemingly insignificant movements throughout the day that dictates the ultimate health of your cardiovascular system. Think of your vascular system as a garden hose. If you leave a garden hose lying perfectly still in the hot sun for days, the rubber becomes dry, stiff, and brittle. When you finally turn on the water pressure, the hose cracks and bursts. But if you constantly coil, uncoil, and use the hose daily, the rubber remains pliable and resilient. Your arteries operate on the exact same mechanical principle. You must keep them pliable through the constant, gentle friction of daily, uninterrupted movement. We have to redefine what it means to rest. True rest is the profound